Welcome back. Joining us now to reveal the best small cap stocks is an independent investment expert and regular, Roger Montgomery. How are you, mate?
I'm well, Peter. Nice to be back on the show.
Yeah, same. Good to see you. So your goal is to pick out what you think are the best small cap stocks. Are we talking A1s, A2s?
Well, I like to stick to the A1, A2. Today is let's look at some small caps, micro caps and nano caps. And what I did is I filtered them by my quality assessment. So I said, okay, I want to only have A1s and A2s, B1s and B2s. And then from there, I just want those that are trading at a discount to intrinsic value.
Yep.
I also want to find those that have a decent return on equity. And I'd like, ideally, those that look like their intrinsic value is going to be rising at a good pace in the future. So my view is that over long periods of time, price follows intrinsic value. Interested in is three things. We want to buy a good quality business at a big discount to intrinsic value with bright prospects for intrinsic value growth.
Okay, so
very
on with
simple.
the show.
Okay,
Drum roll and away
Sorry
we go.
about that. All right, so what I did is I rated these companies as I've just described.
Yep.
And the companies, let me mention the companies that came up on the list quickly and then we'll discuss them. The first one is Forge Group.
Okay. Forge Group.
So Forge Group, we've talked about Forge Group before.
Yeah.
I have to declare my hand, I own shares in Forge Group and I have owned them for quite some time.
Weird, mate. You think the intrinsic value of price is good and you own shares.
Yes.
So that's weird.
Well, I'm supposed to put my money where my mouth
exactly.
is. So I own it in the fund that we run.
Yeah.
Now here's one that we haven't mentioned before, but I have owned it for some time, a company called ThinkSmart.
Oh. That's the guy from Western Australia, the Italian surname. What's his name?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
There's a few guys.
No, but he was.
It's the rental.
Rent Smart.
Correct.
Yeah.
The Rent Smart, the rental business.
Yeah.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
How did that go?
Oh, terrific.
Is that on your website? Can I go back and have a look at that?
It should be there.
Okay. Another one that we've talked about a lot is Matrix, Composite and Engineering.
Yeah.
Now, this is the only other one I've got here for you today that it's at a discount to intrinsic value is Codan. Codan is a business that I've talked about before.
How do you spell Codan?
C-O-D-A-N.
Yeah.
The code is C-D-A.
Yeah.
And
yeah, well, my guys can get up on screen.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Yep.
And the other one, which is at a slight premium, and I want to talk about this one a little bit because I've had a lot of questions about it on my website, on my blog, and that's Nick Scali, the furniture manufacturer. Yeah. Have you had Anthony Scali here on the show?
No, I have not.
Well, it'd be good to get him on to talk about.
You're a Nick Scali fan, are you?
Well, let me just say this. I think this is.
Codan's had a rough.
And this is why it's coming up. This is why it's coming up as being cheap compared to its intrinsic value. I've got it at a 16% discount to intrinsic value. Return on equity 37.9%, which is very, very good. Let me give you some other stats. I've got the forecast change in intrinsic value actually staying relatively flat at the moment. But if they win a few, good contracts, then I think what
do
we'll
they
find,
do, mate?
They're in the resource servicing distantly.
Type stuff.
Not quite. They're not rock crushing. They're not in. But anyway, I want to go back to Nick Scali for a minute because I've had more questions about that company than any other recently. It's in furniture now. I mentioned that
it's a tough game nowadays,
and that's what I want to say. It is a really, really tough business. I'll tell you why it's a tough business. The barriers to entry are fairly low. Now, Anthony Scali does a terrific job. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Once again,
you can see exactly. Again. And why am I haven't mentioned it before really that much. I'm mentioning it now because the share price has gone down, and it is at a discount.
You don't think the intrinsic value has gone down by a certain amount, and therefore there's value?
No, it's still at a little premium to its intrinsic value. But it is a tough business. Barriers to entry are very, very low.
Yeah, it's cottage.
Yeah, there's the problem is that you've got this new dynamic in the industry. There's a lot of the retro furniture, the guys making copycat Eames furniture, the Danish design furniture, getting it made out of China or out of Indonesia, and they're shipping it over on crates, selling it very, very cheaply and using the internet. One warehouse in Leichhardt or something like that, and they don't have the
overheads, not paying the labour.
Exactly. So that's one big problem. Now, what are they doing? They know it's tough. They recognise that's eroding their business. So they've announced a new business called Sofas to Go. Now, Sofas to Go is meant to appeal to the budget budget-conscious renter or the first home buyer. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to work. I think it's a Me Too kind of strategy.
Well, in a sense, it's what Qantas did with Jetstar, being two markets, isn't it? So Nick's probably, he's always been high-end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, I've got one other. So that's it. It might meet all the criteria. It might look good on the surface, and this is the warning to everyone who follows this particular approach. You have to sit back and you have to think about the business, and you have to say, how many furniture retailers are there? How much money do they actually make? What's happened to their profit? Has there been substantial profit growth over the last 5 or 10 years? You need to look at all those things and ask yourself, why do I think this is going to be a substantially bigger business than it is today? Yes, they could roll out some stores, but they're really competing against a whole lot of other operators in this space.
So are you in Nick's camp or not?
I like the business, but it's a tough business to be in. Right. I prefer to own a business where the decisions are easy to make, not tough to make.
Now,
These are tough
companies do you want to talk about?
Okay.
We have 4 minutes left.
I've got one other one that I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
So this is a business called the Zicom Group. Zicom. ZGL.
Oh, okay. ZGL.
Okay. ZGL is the code.
Yep, good.
Now, again, it's a business I own shares in.
Yep.
I've not talked about it before. What do? Well, they're a manufacturer, get this, of hydraulic winches.
Winches?
Correct. Yeah. And ROVs, remotely operated vehicles. Right. But this business ticks all my boxes, and maybe...
I think you might have mentioned this once.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. I
wouldn't have wanted to if I did.
Okay.
So
lately it's improved?
Well, I actually think this particular business, it reminds me of the recent acquisition that Buffett's made. He recently bought a large lubricant business, industrial lubricants, and you sort of scratch your head and you go, gee, you know, he must really be bullish about resources and the sorts of trucks that are going to be needed to transport, all that sort of thing. So this business, they also manufacture concrete mixers. There's a lot of talk about the concrete that's going to be needed to reconstruct parts of Japan, all that sort of thing. Whether these guys have a direct benefit to that, I don't know.
So they buy trucks and make a mixer on the back?
They make the mixers. They install gas metering systems as well. They don't seem to be a very exciting business. No. You know, it's not as exciting as Vocus, which I've mentioned last time. And you got the Vocus. You got the Vocus CEO on.
Always on the cutting edge of this program.
I'm delighted to hear it, and that went very well, I heard.
Yes, it did.
Okay, so that's a fantastic little business. Right. But this is a good one. Meets all my criteria. It isn't an A1 yet. I've got it as a B2.
Okay.
It's a B2. If I can give you some other stats, I've got it trading at a discount of about 18% to its intrinsic value, and I think that intrinsic value is...
It's well into the right territory, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that intrinsic value is going to grow at about 10% a year for the next 2 or 3 years.
What about Forge Group? You mentioned you wanted to say a bit more.
They're at a discount to intrinsic value as well. Look, I have to admit, I and many people who've watched your program have no doubt made a lot of money owning Forge. We've talked about it in the past. It's a mining services company, pick and shovel supplier, if you like. You know, I put them all in that camp, and it's trading at a big discount, still trading at a big discount to intrinsic value. I don't think the ructions that we're feeling in the resource sector are permanent. I do believe that we're going to see, for example, the oil price rise substantially in future years, and I do think that the bull run in iron ore and in coal will continue for many decades. It won't go up in a straight line. It'll be lumpy along the way. What I'll do is I'll put some stats up about these companies and some facts on my blog. We'll put that up on your website as well, Peter, and people can download it and have a look at those companies if they want to.
Think smart. It's Ned something. Yes. You're thinking about.
But this is a business...
And they're in Europe. They've done pretty well in Europe and the UK,
the expansion overseas is the bit that excites me. It's the same as Oriton. It's their expansion overseas that excites me. People are looking at what they've done in Australia and how many stores they've got left to open in Australia, and that's the end of it. But these are some small companies that are doing very well going overseas.
Okay, mate. Well, that's a good group of companies, and as always, you've made us think about...
And in a fortnight, if we can come back, let's just focus on 1 or 2 and just talk about those.
Okay.
We won't do a list again for a while. No. We'll just talk about the ones we've mentioned.
Yeah, and I'll play devil's advocate.
Fine.
Okay, mate. Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks for